Welcome back to Weekend Prime, and as promised, we're going to have a conversation on tackling violent extremism. And it has been 3 years since the 14 Riverside attack, and ahead of the day tonight we're going to focus on what strides Kenya has made in tackling this issue. What are some of the root causes of violent extremism? Radicalization is one of them, and of course we are going to try and see how far we have come in dealing with this problem in the country, and of course this is something that affects the entire region and the whole world at large. We have a specially curated panel for you that's going to shed light on the strides that I'm talking about. We have with us Dr. Rosa Nyawira, from the National Center for Terrorism, National Counter-Terrorism Center. We also have Bruno Shioso. He is the police spokesperson, and we also have relatives of the mastermind of the Dusit D2 attack. That is Amina Hassan, who is the sister, and of course Sakina Abdallah, who is the mother. And of course the reason why we are incorporating them in this conversation is that oftentimes we focus on the actual victims, we focus on the people, the first responders, we focus on the journalists, and sometimes we forget that there are families that are left behind when young people are radicalized and they have to deal with the stigma that surrounds being named and shamed. The communities actually shun them for being associated with someone who fell victim of radicalization. So to start this conversation, I'll pose this to, the obvious question is how far we have come. So Dr. Nyawira, I'll start with you. How far have we come in terms of the lessons we have learned, and what have we done to ensure that we are a safer country?
Thank you very much. For starters, terrorism has been with us for a while now in this country. But we have made strides from 1998, when we had the first major attack against Kenya. And all through then the 2010s and up to now, we have made a lot of strides in terms of investing in counter-terrorism and also prevention of violent extremism, and also on the response mechanisms during an attack like we saw at Dusit. That the response mechanism from the security agents was very well coordinated. And so we would say we have really grown from a period where we would be very afraid of the attacks to knowing what now the enemy is planning, and being able to predictively understand the enemy and what they are planning and take the precautionary measures. Very important, I would also want to mention that we have really made a big stride in bringing the Kenyan public to the knowledge of who a terrorist is and how all this happens. And especially we at the National Counterterrorism Center, whose mandate is to coordinate counterterrorism efforts, one of our major matters is public awareness. And I would say that in this country, I'm proud to say that in every county, and especially even amongst the population, it is the name of Al-Shabaab, for example, everyone knows and understands who they are and what the enemy is up to. And even those that may not quite understand, there are a lot of plans to make them understand who it is and how to respond. And most importantly, what to watch out for and where to report so that proper action is taken. So we've really come a long way on these matters.
All right. Now, Bruno Shio, so by the time we're seeing these events unfold, maybe in the news and the papers or social media, we see the police in action. But a lot of the work also involves doing things behind the scenes, even and thwarting some of these attacks. Tell us some of the lessons that we have learned since then, and of course, what can we do as local communities to ensure that we are part of the solution?
Thank you, Trix, for having me. And thanks to my other fellow panelists. Good evening, Kenyans. From the events of Dusit 2 3 years ago, as National Police Service and our partners within the law enforcement, we've learned so much from the lessons learned. And from that, we've come together to build some more greater partnerships as the security architecture within the country. We've also learned how we can now work closely with the communities that are victims of this issue of terror and violent extremism. So we work very closely with our partners, including NCTC, civil organizations within the communities. And on the side of the law enforcement, we've learned that you have to make great investments in understanding the threat environment, and also to build more partnerships and to work very, very closely with the communities. And having talked about the communities, we've deliberately invested so much in terms of community policing as a preventive measure of trying to reach the communities, working together in preventing, in prevention of violent extremism.
Okay, now I'll go back to you, Dr. Nyawira. Radicalization is no small matter, and we're talking about the roots of violent extremism. It starts off by some of the feelings of disenfranchisement that many young people in Kenya are facing owing to a lack of economic empowerment and similar situations. Will you speak to that?
You know, really, sometimes we may think that the education is coming out of things like economic disempowerment and stuff, but first of all, there is an ideology that attracts people to this, and sometimes, regardless of how little knowledge that the recruits will have, there's someone who is behind an ideology who wants to spread it and convinces them that the problems they're having, for example, if they are not employed, there's an alternative to employment, and also for a greater cause. So, and that really is a major rallying call. Every time there is a recruiter, they will start with trying to convince the recruits, first of all, that they have a better pedigree than the rest of the population, and give them a group identity that if you do this, you belong to a better group, you will belong to a group that accepts you. And that's why you see even in targeting, they're very thoughtful in who they are targeting. They will look out for weaknesses among the recruits, and they exploit that. For example, if you're talking about children from broken families, which you've seen happening, they will look for those ones that are suffering identity crisis, and they will give them an identity. You will belong to a group that is called for a higher calling, and whoever you will be attacking then is of a lesser pedigree than yourselves. So then, of course, there are the push and pull factors that you'll find, for example, economics, others are, looking for better lives and all that. But we would also want to see that they target people. Fine, there will be some of them, and it's not even because some of the attackers in this country were in school. Yeah. So it's not because they were lacking in money that they went to the terrorist groups. It is because they were convinced that what they were doing is worthwhile and will earn them better lives in the afterlife. What they will call that you're going to get Jannat Firdaus. That's the ultimate heaven. So yes, there are push and pull factors. There will be poverty, there will be others, but also the ideology is important.
All right, and I have to warn you that some of the images that you're running might be triggering for survivors and victims and those who lost relatives in that particular attack. So just be aware of that. But still, this is a very worthwhile conversation. And I'd like to hear you, Dr. Nyawira has talked about some of the other factors, the ideology that is used to lure young people into some of these violent extremist groups. Now, I'd like Mr. Shioso to dig into that factor. Then, when it comes to ideology, then it means it's quite difficult to, pinpoint some of the possible victims. I do believe the police have the work cut out for them when it comes to tackling this problem. Could you explain to us some of the challenges and some of the new ways you're using to tackle this before it comes to some of the eventualities that we have seen in the news?
Thank you for that again. Tackling terrorism and sorting out the issue of violent extremism is a very challenging issue for law enforcement all over the world. First of all, because these are people dealing with the issue of ideology. First of all, to understand it from the law enforcement perspective is very tricky. So for us, we simply just try to follow the evidence. And that's why we have to work with the communities. But then the victims are the communities, and the perpetrators again are the communities, and they live together. So penetrating and trying to get the information, the evidence, and trying to make a case out of it is so challenging. And that's why we are trying to invest deliberately so much in intelligence collection, so that we can try to work closely with the communities. Because without working with the communities, we can never be anywhere, we can never get the information that can turn into intelligence, into intelligence and evidence, finally, for us to make headway in terms of investigations. And as police, again, we work at different levels. We are supposed to, again, coordinate and work with the NCTC and other actors in trying to prevent the extremism at the lower level. At the same time, again, we are supposed to tackle the issues of terrorism itself as a threat to communities. So again, this balance of trying to have the softer approach in dealing with the prevention aspect of it at the grassroots, at the same time, again, employing the tough tactics of trying to actually, combat terrorism at the higher level, again, getting that mix is a bit problematic. And that now, again, makes us even harder to infiltrate and be able to work with the communities because they look at us suspiciously from now our hard tactics of trying to counter the terrorism itself.
Yes.
As we try to reach out to them, for them to collaborate with us so that we can be able to assist in trying to counter the violent extremism. Because now these are two extremities. We're talking about countering extremism at the lower level and again preventing terrorism at the higher level. Mm-hmm. So it's a bit of a mix.
Okay, yeah. Okay, and like I told you earlier on, we have relatives of members of a family that was left behind after one of them was found, was part of the masterminds, one of the masterminds of the Dusit attack. Now, I'd like to dig into the personal experience of a family that says it was not aware of the fact that one of them was being lured into these activities. Before they knew it, they were a spotlight was on them, and of course they are subject to stigma from local communities. I'll start with you, Amina. Could you tell us what it was like? Take us back to the moment when you realized that one of your own close relatives was part of this. What came to mind? Amina?
On that day when I heard about the Riverside being attacked, I was on my way to Mombasa. I didn't even realize my brother could be involved because we have been raised in an army soldier, like Kenya Army family.
Yes.
So anything to do with terrorism, we never thought it can come to us, mm-hmm. or one of us can be radicalized or can be involved in such acts. While traveling, I reached Mombasa. I remember the first news I saw about the attack, I prayed for the victim, for the ones who were attacked by the Al-Shabaab militia. Right. Without even me noticing my brother, he's one of them. I prayed, I said, I remember in Swahili, Mungu, fanya isikue kama ya Westgate. Make sure these people before it even ends. Leo fanya tofauti serikali yetu iwa handle isichelewe kama ya Westgate.
Right.
Innocently, without even me realizing my brother was one of them. It was hard for us. It was painful because at that moment they are victims.
Yeah.
You don't know if you can say sorry to them or sorry to your family. You have lost a brother. You have lost your fellow Kenyans. You don't, at the moment you get confused because that was not the plan. The plan was to pray for your country, for your fellow Kenyan citizens. But it turns out your brother is the mastermind in all those things. Without even predicting, it could be one of them. So it's hard.
All right, now, Amina, thank you so much for opening up about this very personal struggle. Now, could you speak to the character of your brother? Had you, someone who's close to you, had you seen any warning signs? Had he demonstrated behavior that would indicate that he would have proclivities towards this sort of radicalization or this sort of ideologies? Amina?
We, as a normal family, we have been raised well. Everything was going well until our family, our dad and my stepfather parted ways. We were left with our mom. She struggles to raise us. So as we were running up and down to cater for our day to day life, yani ile yani kujikimu na kusaidia wamama. We said now it's high time we just return to turudia yani Mwenyezi Mungu. Kama kwa Uislamu kuna vitu unaweza kuwa umefanya, then you decide now it's high time I return to God and pray hard for this thing to change. So as if I can say I saw my brother changing, or there is a process or steps it took that was different.
Right.
There is none.
Okay.
I remember even the last time when he was leaving home, alikuwa na vitu anapenda. Unajua kuna ile kitu unapenda uwezi acha hadi ukienda anywhere. But when he left saying anaenda kutafuta kazi, which inaweza mlipa vizuri zaidi ile anafanya, so that our mom can rest. Sisi tukete for everything. Alitoka na nguo mbili akasema anaenda interview Meru. It was nothing personal.
Yeah.
Someone carrying 2 clothes, you probably know he will return soon.
Yes.
That's how he left. About us noticing, we didn't notice because ukisema unataka kureform, hata Mkristo, hata Muhinduism, ukisema unataka kuacha maisha ya sisi youth tunasema sherehe. Urudie Mungu, anze kuomba Mungu kuwe righteous in a way. So that's, you huwezi sema tuli notice amechange vibaya. Pana hata unasema ametoka kwa hizi mambo ya dunda kama sisi youth vile tunaongea. Then ameenda kwa mambo ya Mwenyezi Mungu, that's better. You never saw it coming like a change paka akwe radicalized to be in that group.
All right.
There is no process, there is no sign. You cannot even tell. As for us, we couldn't tell.
All right. Now, the person in question we're speaking of is Ali Salim Gishunge alias Farouk, who's now late. Now, we also have his mother with us this day, and that is Sakina Abdallah. Sakina, you raised this young man. Could you tell us if there were any indications and from his background, from his upbringing, what did you see this coming? What could you speak about his character as a person? Sakina? Sakina, could you speak? Anauliza, wewe ulimkuza huyu Ali Salim Gishunge. Kuna chochote ambacho uliona akikua ambacho kilikuonyesha labda anapotoka, au wale alikuwa kwa vikundi vibaya au za kidini ambazo ulidhani labda si nzuri, ukimkuza uliona kuna shida yoyote?
Huyo kijana ni kijana wangu wa pili. Mimi Mungu amenibariki na watoto 5, ambaye ndio alikuwa kijana wa kipekee, wengine ni wasichana. Na alisalim tangu utoto wake, tangu anzie shule nursery mpaka form primary mpaka form 4, alikuwa ni kijana mzuri sana na sio kijana wa maneno mengi. Na hata vile amekuwa tangu utotoni, tabia zake hazikuwa tabia mbaya za kuoneshana kama anaingilia vitu vibaya. Kwa nyumba pia kazi yake ilikuwa akitoka shule, ni kijana alikuwa anapenda kukaa na fuga masungura na hizi ndege za kupeperuka hizi kama njiwa. Hiyo ndio ilikuwa kazi yake. Akitoka shule anakimbia anatafuta mamboga kwa soko, anachuna majani huko. Mamu, acha nipatie sungura zangu hizi mboga, alafu niende nikanunue hizi njiwa, nauza hii kubwa ninunue zingine ndogo. Namwambia ni sawa. Tangu hapo kijana aliendelea na maisha mazuri. Tuliendelea na mtoto yangu vizuri kabisa, na hakuwa na mabadiliko yoyote. Ikafika mahali hata wakati aliondoka 2015, aliondoka tu akasema ni kazi anaenda kutafuta. Sababu mahali alikuwa ameajiriwa alikuwa anapata pesa kidogo 8,000. Mam, nimeona wewe na baba mmetengana na madada zangu wako nyuma wananitegemea. Nimetamani kusoma, masomo yangu imerudi nyuma. Nimetamani journalist, baba amesema hata nisomesha, KMTC amesema hataweza. Wacha niende. Nimepata scholarship, nisome, nikimaliza Mungu akinisaidia, nitakuja tusaidiane kusomesha hawa madada zangu, maisha yao isiharibike kama yangu vile imekanyagiwa, lakini natamani kila kitu kitakuwa kizuri. Mama, niombe Mungu, na nina hakika, nina imani nimeenda kusoma na nitarudi na mtafurahi. Tangu hapo sijaona chochote kama hiyo. Hiyo wakati hata hiyo news ilipotokea, mimi sikuwa nimejua kama nitakuwa mhusika. Mimi nilikuwa nimetoka nikaenda hospitali, na wakati ninarudi nilipita mahali nikakunywa soda, nikapigiwa simu, ni dada yake akiwa Mombasa. Ikawa nimezima simu yangu kidogo, nikafungua nikampigia, akaniambia, mama, umeona kwa news? Nikamuuliza nini? Ndugu yangu ni mmoja wa kuataki Dusit. Wapi? Nairobi. Nikamwambia ni uongo. Ali hawezi kufanya kazi kama hiyo. Lini alienda na akaingia mahali kama hiyo? Na ni masomo alienda. Akaniambia, mama, enda uangalie news. Dunia mzima imeshuhudia, sisi tumeingia kwa shida. Nikasema kulingana na vile nilikuwa nampenda na vile Ali alikuwa ni mtoto mzuri na ni mtoto mtiifu, ni mtoto muaminifu kwa kila upande, hata walimu wake wanamjua, majirani pia, hajawahi kukosea mtu.
Sasa labda nikurudishe kwa ile siku ambayo hiyo siku watu wa jamii yenu, community yenu iliwageuka ama bado waliendelea kuwakumbatia kama mmoja wenu? Mambo yalibadilika, mahusiano yenu na majirani na watu ambao wanajua yalibadilika?
Wakati hiyo kitendo kilipotendeka, enyewe nilikujiwa nyumbani, nikaambiwa nikaandike statement, nikaenda nikachukuliwa mpaka prison. Watoto ndio walibaki. Watoto walibaki na wachache wale waliwakumbatia kama marafiki wangu. Kuna chama nilikuwa naendelea naye, walibaki na watoto mpaka hiyo miezi 7. Nilikaa ndani mpaka miezi 7, nikaachiliwa. Enyewe nilipoachiliwa, maisha yalikuja yakanigeuka. Wachache walinikubali, wengi walinitoroka. Wenye walikuwa karibu na mimi, kuna wale pia walibaki kupigana vita wakisema hakuna kitu kama hicho ninajua. Walijaribu kunitetea, lakini pia wao wanageuka na wengine, naambiwa ni kufunika wanafunika. Lakini tangu hiyo 2019 niliachiliwa mwezi wa 7 tarehe 5, maisha ilinizungusha. Nimesumbuka akili mpaka 2021 Julai, at least ndio Mungu amenitumia marafiki wa karibu sana. Wamenishikilia yenyewe kwa kunifariji. Mimi nilikuwa naomba Mungu niletee marafiki wa kunifariji. Mungu sio wa kunicheka. Kama Mungu ni kuchekwa, nimechekwa. Kama ni mtoto nimepoteza, kama ni mtoto amepoteza hata familia, watu wengine. Jamii zingine zinalia, pia mimi ninalia kwa ile kitendo ametenda. Mimi niko na uchungu mara mbili. Niko na uchungu kwa yale alitenda, na niko na uchungu kwa kumkosa, na pia kwa mwenye kumchukua akamuingiza kwa kazi mbaya. Hiyo mimi ninalaani na inaniuma mpaka saa hii.
Okay, now I'll pose this one over to you, Dr. Nyawira. It's very interesting that the personality that's being described here is almost an oxymoron when you compare it or put it side by side with the actual event of the Riverside attack. How do you then tackle this? Because even the people around this person are oblivious to what might be going on in their minds. So where do you begin when it comes to tackling youth being radicalized?
we actually advise that there's no ideal personality of a terrorist.
Yeah.
So that you can say that if you look like XYZ, then you're going to be a terrorist. And that's why when we are telling people of what to watch out for, we advise that do not think that your child cannot be recruited in terrorism, because the people who recruited Ali Salim and who recruit others know what they are looking for. So this is a young man. He's coming from a family that has some issues, and he really wants to help. And you convince him that he can actually benefit. He can help his family by, they're lied to that they're going to be paid some good money as a salary, and then he will also get heaven. So for him, looking at the situation at home and wanting to help really becomes a motivation. But once you get there, and this is the practice, you go into further radicalization, so that ultimately, for example, even when you come back, you are not thinking about your family and the pain you are going to take them through. You are thinking about killing, and you become actually a level killing machine.
Yeah.
And so it's very important that when people start seeing those telltale signs, like someone becomes very pious, all of a sudden he starts accusing the family members that what you're watching is religious, and the way you are living, you need to change. Someone starts meeting, maybe they were going for a religious meeting somewhere, they become more frequent, they are meeting strangers, they are meeting in seclusion. He becomes a recluse, he does not want to talk much. Those are some of the signs. There will always be some people, when you don't really know what you're looking for, you can actually miss that signature, that something is changing. But of course, then they're told that you need to migrate to the land of jihad, and then that when they move, then of course they go further radicalization, and only when you go there to find out the things were not as supposed to or had been promised. But there are some who really get so deep into this that even when they are sent to come back, they will not contact their families, because they know that any contact will dissuade them from carrying out the mission that they did, and it becomes that they really avoid. For example, like in Dusit, that was the case even for like Ali Salim. He didn't want to contact family because he knew once he sees family, something in him will change, and his mission was to come and kill. So it's important, and we tell the public when we are educating them that watch out, parents watch out, teachers watch out for. Do not sometimes expect very big changes, but there will be subtle signs. There's always some signature that may sometimes gets obfuscated by other things, but it is always there. And that's why it is important for training and public awareness to tell you what to watch out for. They will change the mode of dressing, but you think it is okay. They are becoming more religious. It's acceptable. After all, anyone would want their child to be morally upright and more religious.
Seems like a good thing.
Yes, you think it's a good thing, but you're not. When you don't understand what's happening, you assume it's a good thing. The next thing is you don't. He has traveled, and maybe after some time he's the one who comes back to carry out the attack.
Now, Mr. Shioso, the subtlety of it all, of course, poses one problem. And in the age of the internet and technology, how then are you? What new things are you putting in place to ensure that you're able to track this and stop it in its tracks?
Yeah, cyber terrorism, cybercrime, has made the issue of terrorism to become a big challenge. And as a National Police Service, we are placing a very great investment in cybercrime investigations. And by that, we've tried to enlist young officers who are well versed in issues of cybercrime, so that we can be ahead trying to track through the internet and know people who are trying to radicalize those groups that form around the internet. And it goes even all beyond to issues of money laundering, because there's financing of terrorism again, which still happens through the systems. So it's a new area that we are trying to invest in terms of trying to manage how technologies are used in this space of terrorism and violent extremism. So we are trying to catch up, but so far we've made some very good strides in terms of investments, training, and having the capacities that can be able to tackle it.
All right, thank you very much. And of course, I'd like to give a special thank you to our guests who have given some very personal accounts of what ensued after they found out that their own was part of their attack, actually a mastermind. And thank you also to the officials who are working towards ending radicalization among the youths, geared towards putting a stop to violent extremism in Kenya. And this is a problem, not just a Kenyan problem, it's an international, global problem that's being faced in different ways in different parts of the country. We had tonight Dr. Rosa Nyawira, the Director, National Counter-Terrorism Center. We also had Bruno Shioso, spokesperson, National Police Service. We also had Sakina Abdallah, mother of Ali Salim Gishuge, and sister to Ali Salim Gishuge, Amina Hassan. And that draws Weekend Prime to a close. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. My name is Trix Ingado, and enjoy the rest of your viewing.